Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Great Books in 10 Minutes. By the end of this episode, you will know all that you need about Carlo Collodi's beloved book, The Adventures of Pinocchio. The story of Pinocchio begins in Tuscany, where an Italian carpenter named Master Antonio, nicknamed Master Cherry, finds a block of wood that he decides to carve into a leg for his table. The moment Master Cherry starts his work, the log of wood screams. Terrified by what he just witnessed, the carpenter gives the block of wood to his neighbor Geppetto, who is a kind-hearted but extremely poor man. Geppetto carves the wood into a puppet and names him Pinocchio. Even before his creation is finished, Pinocchio shows a mischievous character and behaves with impudence. For example, when Geppetto carves the puppet's legs, they start to kick, and when he makes his nose, it begins to grow. Finally, when Pinocchio is fully built, Geppetto teaches him how to walk, and as soon as Pinocchio learns how to walk, he runs out of the door and goes into the town. After a short time, a policeman in the street catches Pinocchio running away and assumes that he has been mistreated by Geppetto and imprisons the poor man. Left all alone and hungry, Pinocchio goes back to Geppetto's house to eat something. At home, a talking cricket who has been living in the house for over 100 years warns him of the terrible things that could happen to children if they don't behave properly and disobey their parents. Pinocchio loses his temper with the cricket and throws a hammer at it, which lands more accurately than he intended to and kills it. Still hungry and alone, Pinocchio tries to fry an egg to eat. But when he cracks the egg open, a little bird flies out of it, which forces the puppet to leave the house and ask for food in the streets. Pinocchio knocks on an old man's door. The old man, believing that he is one of those unknowing kids who knock on doors and run away, dumps a bucket of cold water on his head instead of feeding him. Cold and miserable without anything to eat, Pinocchio goes back home and falls asleep next to the stove. The next day, when he wakes up, he realizes that his legs have been burnt and he can't walk anymore. Fortunately, Geppetto is set free and gives him a new pair of legs. In return, Pinocchio promises to behave well and attend school. Poor Geppetto sells his only coat to buy him a school book and sends him to class. The next day, and on his way to school, Pinocchio encounters the Great Marionette Theater and sells his schoolbook to buy a ticket. During the show, 3 puppets named Harley Quinn, Pulcinella, and Signora Rosaura recognize Pinocchio as their fellow puppet and call out his name, which ruins the performance and angers their owner, Master Mangiafuoco. The angry puppeteer decides to use Pinocchio as firewood to cook his dinner on, but when Pinocchio begs him for his life and tells him about his poor father, the puppeteer feels bad and gives him 5 gold coins to give to Geppetto and sends him on his way. On his way home, Pinocchio encounters a fox and a cat. The cat pretends to be blind and the fox pretends to be lame. The 2 charlatans convince Pinocchio that if he plants his coins in a place called the Field of Miracles outside the city of Catchfools, they will grow into a tree bearing gold coins as fruit. On their way to the Field of Miracles, they stop at a restaurant called the Red Lobster, where the fox and the cat order a lot of food at the expense of Pinocchio. After eating, when everyone falls asleep, they abandon the puppet, leaving him behind to pay for the meal with one of his gold coins. Before leaving, they ask the innkeeper to tell Pinocchio that they had to leave because the cat's eldest kitten has fallen ill and that they will meet him at the Field of Miracles in the morning. On his way to the city of Catchfools, Pinocchio sees the ghost of the talking cricket. The cricket warns him to return home and give the coins to his father. The disobedient puppet ignores his advice and continues on his foolish errand. A few moments later, the fox and the cat, disguised as bandits, ambush Pinocchio and attempt to rob him of his coins. Pinocchio bites off the cat's paw, then hides the coins in his mouth and flees. Terrified and regretful, Pinocchio arrives at a white house in the middle of the forest. When he knocks on the door, a blue-haired young fairy answers. The fairy tells Pinocchio that she is actually dead and is waiting for an undertaker to bring her coffin and take her. She also refuses to open the door for Pinocchio. At the same time, the fox and the cat arrive, still disguised as bandits, and catch Pinocchio. They torture the puppet to open his mouth and let go of the gold coins, but Pinocchio stubbornly refuses. Eventually, the bandits get tired of waiting for him to suffocate and leave. Next, the fairy opens the door and orders a falcon to rescue Pinocchio and bring him down. Then she calls in 3 famous doctors to examine and see if Pinocchio is dead or not. 2 of the doctors are not certain if the puppet is alive. The 3rd doctor, who is the ghost of the dead cricket, tells the fairy that Pinocchio is alive, but he has been hurtful to his father. The fairy gives Pinocchio some medicine and the puppet agrees to take it when a group of undertaker rabbits arrive to carry Pinocchio's dead body away. Next, the fairy asks the puppet about the gold coins and Pinocchio lies about it. This time, however, with every lie his nose grows until it is so long that he can't turn around in the room. The fairy calls for a flock of woodpeckers to cut his nose down. The fairy then invites Geppetto to come and live with them. Pinocchio is so happy that he runs to the town to give the news to his father himself. On his way, he once again encounters the cat and the fox. When Pinocchio recognizes the cat's missing paw that he had bitten off earlier, the fox claims that they had to sacrifice it to feed a hungry wolf. Then they remind Pinocchio of the Field of Miracles and fool him to go with them once again. They pass through the city of Catchfools, where every inhabitant has done something stupid and now they all suffer as a result of their foolishness, and finally arrive at the Field of Miracles. Pinocchio plants his gold, and when he leaves for the 20 minutes that is needed for the coins to turn into a tree, the fox and the cat dig up the coins and run away. When Pinocchio returns, a parrot who had witnessed the fox and the cat's treachery mocks him for his lack of intelligence and tells him all that had conspired. Pinocchio runs to the courthouse at the city of Catchfools and reports the theft of his gold coins to a gorilla judge. Despite feeling bad for Pinocchio, the judge sentences him to 4 months in prison for the crime of being foolish. Fortunately, at the same time, the Emperor of Catchfools triumphs over his enemies and frees all of his prisoners. Pinocchio goes back to the forest to find the fairy, and after encountering a giant snake and an ordeal with a farmer who captures him in a trap while stealing grapes, he arrives at the old place where the fairy's house used to be. This time, however, he finds nothing but a tombstone with the inscription that reads, "Here lies the lovely fairy with blue hair, who died of grief when abandoned by her little brother, Pinocchio." While grieving for the fairy, a friendly pigeon offers the puppet to give him a ride to the seashore, where Geppetto is building a boat to go and find Pinocchio. When they arrive at the shore, Geppetto has already left. Pinocchio tries to swim and get to his father, but the waves push him back to the coast. Geppetto is then swallowed by a sea monster named the Terrible Dogfish. Next, Pinocchio accepts a ride from a dolphin to the nearby island of Busy Bees. At the island, Pinocchio realizes that he can only get food in return for honest labor. After begging for food without any success, he offers to carry a lady's jug of water in return for food and drinks. When they get to the lady's house, Pinocchio, to his surprise, realizes that she is in fact the blue-haired fairy who is not only alive but is now old enough to be his mother. Under the fairy's supervision, Pinocchio goes back to school, and the fairy hints that if the puppet does well and behaves for 1 whole year, he could become a real boy. Pinocchio does well at school and rises to the top of his class, which makes his classmates jealous. They come up with a lie and tell the puppet that they have seen the sea monster that swallowed Geppetto at the beach and make Pinocchio skip class. When the lie falls apart, a fight breaks out, and the boy gets hurt when someone throws Pinocchio's book at him. Two policemen accuse Pinocchio of injuring his classmate and intend to arrest him. Pinocchio escapes, and on his way out of trouble, saves a dog named Alidoro from drowning. Next, a green fisherman who is so ugly that looks like a monster catches Pinocchio in his net while fishing. When the puppet tries to explain to him that he's not a fish, he doesn't believe him and decides to fry him. Right when he is about to put Pinocchio in the frying pan, Alidoro, the dog that Pinocchio saved on his way out of town, arrives and saves him by jumping on the green fisherman. When Pinocchio returns home, the fairy gives him another chance and sends him back to school. The puppet does excellent at school and passes with high honors. The fairy, impressed by Pinocchio's good work, promises him that he shall be a real boy the next day and suggests that the puppet should throw a party and invite all of his friends. Pinocchio's best friend is a boy named Candlewick. When Pinocchio goes to invite him to the party, he finds him waiting for a coachman to take him to a place called Toyland, where everyone plays all day and night and never works. Amazed by the idea that such a place even exists, Pinocchio decides to join Candlewick on his journey. The two friends spend 5 months at Toyland and play all day and night. One morning they both wake up with donkey ears on their heads. A mouse tells Pinocchio that he has got the donkey fever and explains that boys who waste all their time playing and don't study always turn into donkeys. Soon both Pinocchio and Candlewick completely transform into donkeys and get sold to a circus by the coachman. At the circus, the ringmaster trains Pinocchio to do tricks, and when he falls and breaks his leg, he sells him to a man who wants to skin the donkey and make a drum. The man throws the donkey into the sea to drown him first. When he returns, all he finds is a talking puppet. Pinocchio explains that the fish ate all the donkey's skin off him and he is not a donkey anymore. Pinocchio decides to jump back into the water and find the terrible sea monster that swallowed Geppetto. At the sea, the giant fish swallows the puppet, and inside its belly, Pinocchio finally sees his father again. With the help of a tuna, they manage to escape from the sea monster's belly and go back to the shore. On their way to find a place to call home and stay, Pinocchio and Geppetto encounter the fox and the cat, who are now impoverished. The cat has really become blind and the fox has really become lame and has chopped off his tail to sell for food. They beg Pinocchio for help, but the puppet tells them that their bad situation is the just penalty for their evil deeds. Pinocchio and Geppetto find a small house and start a new life. The puppet finds a job working for a farmer and recognizes the farmer's dying donkey as his friend Candlewick. After a few months of honest labor and supporting his sick father, Pinocchio saves enough money to buy himself a new suit. But right before purchasing the suit, he gets the news that the fairy is ill and needs money. Pinocchio immediately gives all of his money to the snail that brought the news to him and returns home empty-handed. That night, the puppet dreams that he is kissed by the fairy. When he wakes up, he finds himself transformed into a real boy. He then finds his lifeless puppet body on a chair. Furthermore, Pinocchio finds that the fairy has left him a new suit, boots, and a bag with 40 gold coins inside it. Geppetto also recovers from his illness and returns to health. Very well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you liked my summary of Pinocchio. Please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. See you in the next episode.